Borders. We want to have good elections. We want to have low interest rates. We want to be able to buy a house. We want great education. We want strong borders. I think we're I think we're the opposite of weird. They're weird. No, we're not. We're very solid people. We want to have strong borders. We want to have good elections. We want to have low interest rates. We want to be able to buy a house. We want great education. We want strong borders. I think we're I think we're the opposite of weird. They're weird.
Mm-hmm. We're weird. You know, every administration makes these promises that they always make, right? About the economy, about crime, about making America safer, right? President Trump made one of the biggest promises of all. He made a big promise. He said the largest deportation operation in American history would restore order, remove dangerous criminals, and make American communities safer. Millions of Americans believed what he had to say. Millions voted believing that the tougher immigration enforcement would finally solve the problem they had been watching for years. But every policy has consequences. Some are intended and some are not. And sometimes the true cost of a policy is not measured in campaign speeches or press conferences. It's measured in human lives and human beings. Because while most Americans were focused on deportation numbers, another number was quietly growing. Not the number of people arrested, but the number of people dying in ICE custody. People dying inside immigration detention facilities. People are dying during immigration enforcement operations. Families receive phone calls they never imagined that they would receive, all because of a civil infraction. Parents are burying children growing up without parents, lives ending under the custody of authority of the federal government. Renee Goody and Axe Preddy did not end those killings. If anybody has been paying attention, more and more people are dying under ICE custody. Now, before anybody misunderstands where I'm going, this conversation is not about whether America should have borders or whether America should have immigration reform. Okay, that's not the question. Every nation has the right to secure its borders. I get that. Every nation has the authority to enforce its immigration law. That is not today's debate. Today's debate is much more basic than that. Once the government takes custody of another human being, what responsibility does it have to protect the person's life? No matter where you stand politically, custody should never become a death sentence. Tonight, we're going to look at documented deaths connected to federal immigration detention and immigration enforcement since January of this year. We're going to look at what journalists uncovered, what human rights investigators documented, what former immigration officials are saying. We're going to do something like this country doesn't do nearly enough. We're going to remember those people. We're going to remember those names. Hold on. Let me play this clip for you.
Tribune is raising urgent questions about immigration enforcement oversight and human life inside federal detention centers. In the span of 6 weeks, 6 people have died while detained in Texas ICE facilities, 3 of them at Camp East Montana in El Paso. Luann McCreel is one of the reporters covering this story for the Texas Tribune. She's joining us now. Thank you so much for your time.
So, in the span of 6 weeks, 6 people have died while detained in Texas ICE facilities. 6 weeks, 6 people. That's crazy. When Donald Trump returned to the office, he didn't promise small changes. He promised the largest deportation operation in American history. Yes, he did. He promised that. He promised to restore order. He promised to make America safer. And if you voted for him because you believe that promise, I understand it. Every country has a right to secure its borders. Every country has a right to enforce the immigration law. That's not the issue. The issue is this. What happens when government expands its enforcement powers fastly and recklessly, and its ability to safely manage the people it detains? Because that's the question investigative reporters are asking. Even former immigration officials are now asking, what the hell is going on? Why are people dying in the custody of immigration officers?
Things are so low. So these are a lot of folks being detained now who many of them have lived in the country for years, may have, American citizen children. And what has happened is that in the past year, we've seen this spike in deaths across the country, more than 30, which is the highest in more than 2 decades. And in Texas, and particularly, it's been 6 in 6 weeks, as you noted. One, which was the most shocking, that was ruled a homicide involving staff at this troubled detention center in El.
We've seen a spike in deaths across the country, more than 30, the highest in more than 2 decades. The statement should stop every American in their tracks. Every American in their tracks. Not because it's coming from a politician and not because it's coming from an activist, but because it's coming from reporters who spent weeks reviewing federal records and interviewing attorneys and examining what has been happening inside the immigration detention facilities. And here's what concerns me. When people hear the word immigrant, a lot of y'all stop seeing the person as a person. You stop asking questions. You stop demanding accountability. Oh, they deserve to be in jail. They deserve to be killed. You stop wondering whether basic standards of care are being met. Inside, the conversation becomes political. But once the government takes custody of a human being, politics shouldn't determine whether that person receives adequate medical care or not. Timely emergency medical treatment, transparency if they die. That should concern every American, regardless of your party. You should be concerned about that, regardless of your party. Let's keep going.
Crimes beyond their immigration offenses. So what those former officials said is that this is predictable. If you're going to expand at such a rapid pace and you're going to cut oversight, this is what's going to happen. People are going to die.
If you're going to expand at such a rate, a rapid pace, the immigration enforcement, and you're going to cut oversight, which basically means nobody's telling them no. Nobody's telling them that they can't do this, that, and the third. If you're going to cut oversight for the immigration facility, the people, the border patrol, this is what's going to happen. People are going to continue to die. You think about what you just heard. Those aren't my words. Those are former officials who worked inside the immigration system across multiple administrations, including the first Trump administration, are saying. They are warning us straight up. When detention expands rapidly, while oversight is weakened, the risk of preventable failure increases. That's not the same thing as saying every death was preventable. It's saying the system deserves serious scrutiny when deaths continue to rise. And that brings me to the report that deserves far more attention than it has received. The Human Rights Watch, working with Physicians for Human Rights, reviewed deaths in ICE custody during the first 500 days of this administration. Their report concluded that the mortality rate had reached its highest level in more than a decade, and that the increase in deaths was greater than could be explained by the increase in the detained population. The report also identified recurring concerns about transparency, delayed medical care, and whether some deaths may have been preventable. So tonight, I'm not asking you to accept my opinion. I'm asking you to look at the evidence, because before we argue about politics, we need to understand what has actually been happening. And once you see it, it's difficult to look away. This isn't about one person's death. One of the easiest things to do in America today is to dismiss one tragedy. One death, people say it's unfortunate. 2 deaths, people call it a coincidence. 3 deaths, some begin to ask questions. But what happens when the deaths keep coming? Not over 20 years, not over 10 years, not over several administrations. I'm talking about month after month after month in this Trump administration. People have been dying, 5, 6, 7 people every month in this administration. At some point, we have to stop asking whether each death is an isolated incident and start asking whether the system itself deserves more scrutiny. That's exactly what I want to do today. Not because of one headline, not because of one family, not because of one viral video, but because when I started putting these cases together, these ICE cases together, I noticed something that bothered me. The names never seem to stop. Every few days, another report, another death, another obituary, another family looking for answers, another death connected to immigration. And if you're only following the biggest national news stories, you probably never heard of most of these people. Some people barely made the local news. Some disappeared in one election cycle, one news cycle. Some were overshadowed by the next political controversy, Nolan Wales' death. Yet for the families, life didn't move on. For them, the story didn't disappear. The grief didn't end when the cameras left. That's one of the reasons Human Rights Watch says transparency matters so much. In its report, the organization found repeated concerns about the public information available after deaths in custody and about whether families and outside experts were receiving enough information to understand what happened. The report also describes recurring concerns about delayed or inadequate medical treatment in several cases. Let's be fair. Not every person who dies in custody dies because somebody intentionally harmed them. Some people arrive with serious medical conditions. Some deaths may be from natural causes, and every case has its own facts, but fairness cuts both ways. If somebody dies while the government has complete control over their care, the public has every right to ask what happened. Families have every right to expect honest answers, then the government has a responsibility to earn the public's trust through transparency and accountability, because this conversation is not about immigration anymore. It's about responsibility, accountability. It's about what happens when the handcuffs go on. It's about what happens after the detention center closes the doors. It's about whether we still believe every human life has value. And even when that person is in governmental custody. And before we debate another damn policy, before we argue over another headline, I think we owe something to the people whose lives ended. The least we can do is remember those people's names. That's the least we can do. Listen to this clip. Another clip.
Due to transparency.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big part of the question here is the lack of transparency. I mean, for example, in that death that was eventually ruled a homicide, initially ICE said that it was a suicide attempt. So the fact that it was a homicide involving staff, which experts told us is extremely unusual. A former ICE director said that she had not encountered something like this to her knowledge in 15 years of serving under 3 administrations, including the first Trump administration. So, I think the fact that that man's, the autopsy is now possibly not going to be public is very troubling because we don't know if it was a suicide. That's what the government claimed in this case that was ruled a homicide. But
So let me show you this right here. Show you this. Look at these names on this list. Y'all see the names on the list? You see the date? You see the date right here? The date is January 2026. Lunas Campos in ICE custody. Luis Gustavo Nunes in ICE custody, died January 5, January 6 in California, January 7 in Minnesota, January 9th in Pennsylvania, January 14th in Georgia, 14th in Texas. January 23rd in Texas, January 24th in Minnesota, January 16th in Florida, 16th in Georgia, 16th in Indiana. All these people are dying in ICE custody. 2024, February 16th in Georgia, February 16th in Indiana, February 24th in New York, February 27th, California, March 1st, Mississippi, March 2nd, Pennsylvania, March 2nd, Arizona, March 4th, Texas, March 14th, Texas, March 16th, Florida, March 25th, California, April 1st, Indiana, April 11th, Louisiana, April 12th, Florida, April 28th, Georgia, May 20th, Tennessee, May 24th, Florida, June 4th, Louisiana, June 19th, Texas, June 24th, Texas, July 7th, Texas, July 13th, Georgia, July 14th, Florida, July 13th, Maine. All of these people died this year under ICE immigration. All of these people died this year. All of these people. And this was just a 6 months since January. All of these people died in ICE custody. They never stopped killing. They're just killing them in the facility. They're just killing them in ICE detain. They're picking them up and they're dying in their They're dying in their custody. So where's the outrage? After seeing these names, you see all these names. I want you to ask a question. Where was the national outrage? Where's the outrage? These are all Hispanic people. A lot of these are Hispanic people. Renee Good just happened to be white. Alex Petty probably happened to be white. Where's the national outrage for all these people that's dying? Not for the outrage just for Renee Good, not for the outrage that trends on social media. Real outrage, the kind of outrage that forces a country to stop and ask itself whether something has gone terribly wrong. You people ain't mad enough. Ain't no way y'all mad enough. Because if more than 30 people connected to immigration detention and enforcement die over a matter of months, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? I would expect Congress to demand answers. I would expect hearings, investigations, cameras lined up outside detention facilities. But who do we have in charge? Who is in charge of any investigations right now? The Republican Party. And the Republican Party is standing 10 toes down behind detentions and ICE facility deaths. They don't care about killing people. Republicans don't care about killing people. They don't care about people dying in custody. They don't care about brown people or black people dying in custody. They damn sure don't care about that. And most of you that don't work for Border Patrol and don't work for ICE, you don't give a damn about brown and black bodies neither. Because otherwise we would have marching every fucking day. So journalists keep digging. Texas Tribune continue to ask questions. Civil rights organizations continue documenting these cases. Human Rights Watch keeps documenting these cases. Families refuse to let their loved ones become forgotten headline. Lawyers keep filing lawsuits. Advocates keep demanding records. Someone else was dying, is going to die. I guarantee somebody going to die this week in ICE custody. And maybe that's the part that disturbs me the most. Not that people disagree. We're also going to disagree in America. It's that somewhere along the way, many of y'all stopped being shocked about it. You started treating these deaths as if they were simply part of doing business, part of being in a political environment, as if this just happens when immigration enforcement becomes aggressive. But I refuse to accept that. I refuse to believe that the death of someone in custody should ever become routine. I refuse to believe that these people who died, these people on the list this year, died this year. All these people died this year in ICE custody. I refuse to believe that the deaths of these people in governmental custody should ever become routine. I refuse to believe that families should have to fight just to learn how their loved one died. And I refuse to believe that demanding accountability from our government somehow makes me anti-American or anti-law or anti-enforcement or anti-border control. Those are false choices. You can support secure borders. and still expect government to protect the lives of its citizens or the people that it detains. You can believe in enforcing immigration law and still believe that every death deserves a complete, transparent investigation, because accountability doesn't weaken the government, it strengthens public trust. And if Americans lose confidence that deaths in government custody will be fully explained, then we've created a problem that extends far beyond immigration. We created a crisis of trust, and a crisis that affects every one of us. Every one of us. That's wild to me, that all of these people have died in custody and nobody has any kind of outrage towards it. It's like it ain't no big deal to y'all that these people keep dying in custody like this. This is wild. Let me play the clip.
Find out about what's happening. What does that do to transparency?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big part of the question here is the lack of transparency. I mean, for example, in that death that was eventually ruled a homicide, initially ICE said that it was a suicide attempt. So the fact that it was a homicide involving staff, which experts told us is extremely unusual. A former ICE director said that she had not encountered something like this to her knowledge in 15 years of serving under 3 administrations, including the first Trump administration. So, I think the fact that that man's, the autopsy is now possibly not going to be public is very troubling, because we don't know if it was a suicide. That's what the government claimed in this case that was ruled a homicide.
Right. And she had to say it again. But here's the question that keeps bothering me. Why don't we have politicians on both sides of the aisle? I'm sure that there's outrage on the Democratic side. I'm sure of that. But why isn't there enough on the Republican side? Why is it that nobody's speaking up for these people at all? The question is, what kind of country do you want to be? By now, some of you probably made up your minds what kind of country you want. You want death. You want these deaths. You want those people to be dying. You don't care about black and brown bodies. There's no way this many people should be dying in American custody, and there was no reason for them to be dying in American custody. Some of y'all thinking they broke the law. It's a civil infraction. It's not a criminal infraction. And then you got Donald Trump making a lot of y'all believe that these people are taking your jobs, taking your space, taking your apartment, taking your house, and all of that. If somebody can come and take your house and your car and your space and all that, then you aren't good enough to even have that space, that car, or that house, or whatever. Have you ever thought about that? That you're just a regular, mediocre human being like everybody else. Some of y'all say they broke the law. I don't feel sorry for them. Others saying they never should have happened. They never should have been here. But I want to ask everybody watching, regardless of whether you stand with them or politically or not, the conversation isn't really about the Democrat. It isn't really about the Republican. And it ain't even really about immigration. It's about power, specifically the power we give our government. Every government has the authority to arrest people, detain people, and enforce its laws. Those powers are necessary. But with those powers comes an even greater responsibility. Because once the government takes custody of another human being, that person cannot simply walk away if they're sick. They can't choose their doctor. They can't decide to drive themselves to the emergency room. They can't leave a dangerous situation. Their safety is in large part in the hands of the government that chooses to detain them. That's why accountability is not optional here. It's part of the responsibility that comes with exercising authority. I know there are people watching tonight who believe that talking about these deaths means you're against border security. That's how goofy some of y'all are. I don't agree with that. You can believe America should have secure borders. You can believe people who violate immigration law should face consequences. And at the same time, you can believe that every person in the government custody deserves humane treatment. That's where I stand. Appropriate medical care and a full accounting if they die. Those beliefs don't contradict each other. I need to hold our government accountable. People need to hold our government accountable. In fact, they need to reinforce that these two dichotomies, because a nation doesn't prove its strength by how it treats people when everything is good. Our nation is supposed to prove its character by how it treats people when it holds all the power. That's the real test. History has a way of asking those difficult questions. Did you enforce the law? The law? How did you enforce the law? Did you protect the people? Did you protect the borders? Did you protect our values while you were doing it? Those are the questions future generations ask when they look back on moments like this. They killing people every week. That's what they're going to say. They killing people every week. The American government is killing people every week. And those are the questions we should be asking ourselves today. I don't expect everybody watching to agree with me. That's not how democracy works. Healthy societies have disagreement, but healthy societies also demand answers when people die in governmental custody. They demand transparency, accountability, and they refuse to let human beings become statistics that disappear after the news cycle ends. We remember their name, not because all his lives are the same, or they lived the same, they reacted the same, they had the same background, not because they lived in the same spaces, not because they shared the same immigration status either. We remember these people because they share one thing that every one of us shares: their humanity. And if we ever reach the point where a death in government custody no longer causes us to ask questions, no longer causes us to seek the truth, no longer causes us to expect accountability, then we've lowered the standard, not just for our immigration system, but for our whole fucking country. Okay? For our whole freaking country. I have to go back. Right? I have to show you. All of these people died this year. You understand me? All of these people died in ICE custody this year. You see the word over here, ICE custody, U.S. Immigration Custom, ICE, Border Patrol, ICE. You know why the deaths have become more? Is because the border, they have stopped people from crossing the border. So since they have stopped people from crossing the border, they're concentrating on putting the people inside our country into detention facilities. And by doing that, that's how people are dying early. We're having more deaths because they're concentrating more on the people inside of the country. And that's why these people shouldn't be handling any kind of ICE or border. ICE, Border Patrol, ICE. All these people died in the custody of ICE. All of these people this year, this last 6 months, all of these people died in ICE custody. And I don't understand why we're not so outraged. We don't have so much outrage. I don't understand. Okay. Hopefully everybody keeps asking questions, seeking answers, and holding this administration accountable. Because it's happening in this administration. So this administration is accountable for what's going on. Okay. All of these names, all of these people died this year in this custody. It's Border Patrol custody. Accountability should never depend on who's in office either. It should depend on who is doing what right. Okay. And let me see what comment we have in the section. We don't have that many comments in the section. If they weren't in this country illegally, it wouldn't have happened. Stop trying to justify what they did. Stop trying to justify the death of these people. They didn't bring anything on themselves. 90% of these people are good, hardworking people. Stop it. Okay. This is a list of all the people that died in ICE custody this year. That's a fucking shame. Last year, we have had the highest rate of people dying in this country under Donald Trump. 2025 has been the highest rate. We in 2026 are on track to get an even higher number. You all hit the like and the subscribe button. I appreciate it. I bring this kind of content all the time. Okay. I just was disturbed by hearing that some more people had died under custody of ICE. Please hit the like and the subscribe button. I appreciate I appreciate you guys, and I'll be back tomorrow with some more content. Definitely. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate it.